Someone dug a hole. They placed a small child inside it. They wrapped the body in something soft. They put its head on a pillow, and then they covered it up. That child was 2 years old, and that moment, 78,000 years ago, may be the most human thing we have ever done. We bury our dead today without thinking about it. It's just what you do. But for most of human history, it wasn't. And when it started, the reason wasn't what you'd expect. Because the first burials weren't about honoring the dead. Some of them were about containing them. For hundreds of thousands of years, when someone died, the group moved on. You left the body where it fell. Scavengers handled the rest. There was no ceremony, no grave, no marker. Death was just the end of a person. And then, somewhere between 100,000 and 78,000 years ago, something changed. Our ancestors started digging. The question is, why? In 2021, researchers excavating a coastal cave in Kenya made a discovery that stopped them cold. A small pit, deliberately dug. Inside, the remains of a child, 2.5 years old. The bones were still articulated, meaning the body hadn't been moved or scattered. The spine was curled, the knees drawn to the chest, and the position of the skull suggested the head had been resting on something soft, a pillow long since decayed. They named the child Mtoto. It means child in Swahili. This wasn't disposal. This was care. But care alone doesn't explain everything that came next. Because here's the thing. Not all ancient burials look like Mtotos. Some of them look like something else entirely. Something that suggests the living weren't just grieving the dead. They were afraid of them. In the 1960s, an archaeologist named Ralph Solecki was excavating a cave in Iraq. He found a Neanderthal skeleton, and around it, dense clumps of ancient pollen. His conclusion? Someone had placed flowers on the grave. For decades, this was the story. Neanderthals grieved. Neanderthals mourned. They were just like us. Except, that's probably not what happened. A 2023 analysis found that the pollen types don't bloom at the same time of year. You couldn't have gathered them into a single bouquet. The most likely explanation? Burrowing bees, nesting in the sediment, carrying pollen in over thousands of years. The flowers were never there. But here's what was confirmed. In 2016, a new Neanderthal skeleton was found in the same cave. Deliberately placed in a dugout depression. One hand curled under its head. Neanderthals did bury their dead. They just may not have done it out of love. Here's where it gets dark. Across ancient Europe, archaeologists keep finding something strange. Skeletons buried face down. Bodies with heavy stones placed on top of them. Skulls with rocks wedged into their mouths, iron sickles laid across their throats, stakes driven through their chests. These aren't signs of violence. These are signs of fear. Fear that the dead would come back. Before modern medicine, death was terrifying and mysterious. A body would bloat. It would move as gases shifted. In some conditions, it would appear to grow. Hair, nails, color returning to the skin. To people who didn't understand decomposition, this looked like the dead were still alive, still feeding, still growing. And if they were still alive in the ground, what was stopping them from coming out? Burial, in many ancient cultures, wasn't an act of love. It was an act of containment. You buried the body face down so that if it tried to dig out, it would go deeper. You put a stone in its mouth so it couldn't chew through its shroud and spread disease. You pinned it with iron because iron was believed to repel the supernatural. Archaeologists call these apotropaic burials, evil-warding burials, and they appear across ancient Greece, Rome, medieval Europe, and beyond. The grave wasn't a resting place. It was a cage. But something remarkable happened over time. The fear didn't disappear. It transformed. The dead went from being threats to being ancestors, from things to be contained to things to be consulted. Grave goods appeared. Tools, food, ochre pigment painted red like blood, like life. The message was clear. You're going somewhere. You'll need these. That's not fear. That's belief. And that belief in a journey after death, in a world beyond this one, is the seed of every religion that has ever existed. The grave became the first altar. The cemetery became the first sacred space. And the act of burying the dead became the act that made us human. We still don't fully understand why it started. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was hygiene. Maybe it was terror. Probably all three. But somewhere in that first deliberate act of digging, of placing a body in the earth with intention, something shifted. We stopped being animals that died, and we became something that understood death. That's a terrifying thing to understand. And maybe that's exactly why we buried it. If you want to go deeper on the archaeology of ancient human behavior, the next video is right here.